Feel free to take it away.
All right. Good morning again, everyone, and thank you, Loretta, for opening things up, and both of you just doing a wonderful job of bringing us together. And Terry Lee, I mean, come on, you just brought it. So I've been told we have plenty of time, but we are giving each of our panelists 10 to 12 minutes to respond to the 3 questions that Loretta shared with us. Just to repeat those, what do we know? What do we need to know? And who most needs to know this information that is being shared? So I'm not going to be Sandman, but I will ask that everyone take your notes, because we're going to go through each of our panelists, and then we're going to open up to all of you to respond to those questions after hearing this wisdom of our opening panel. So, without further ado, you have in your program who our speakers are, and so refer to the back too and see their affiliations and who they are. And we're not going to take time with bios. You should already know who some of these folks are. And if you don't,
Google.
it's on you. No, we're not going to Google either.
Oh,
We don't
sorry.
do Google, but find your way to who they are.
Right, good for you.
But again, I want to just introduce them in turn, and of course, we're going to start out with Mama Byllye. Who, if you don't know, all right. So
We're praying.
the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Is it working? Good morning. Is it work?
Here,
Here. Here, Billy. Here, take this
it's good.
one. Good morning.
Good
morning.
How y'all doing?
All right.
Okay, so Loretta kind of asked the impossible, expecting it to be done, of course. 12 minutes to give the history of Black women's health.
Take your time.
So
Plenty of time.
So what I decided to do, which is a talk that I must have given 7 million times already. One thing that happens when you get old, you're always asked to do the history. So, but I'm glad, because we need to know where we came from so we can have an idea of where we're going. And it always is an honor. And as always, I consider it a privilege anytime I get to talk to women about ourselves and our lives. So thank you so much for the invitation. I thought I'd talk about really moments in building what I call the Black women's health movement. I didn't realize we were doing that until we moved to Atlanta in 1981. I'm going to back up and tell you a little bit of other stuff too, but in 81 we moved to Atlanta, and Jean Young, who was the wife of Andy Young, who was the mayor, welcomed us to the city. And she said, well, Byllye, you all are starting a movement, and Atlanta is a great place of movements. Well, I didn't know what to do with that, because my mind went to the civil rights movement and all of that. And here I was, up from Gainesville, Florida, who did not know what I was doing. All I know is that I was doing. So I got started, as Terry told you, in Gainesville. And my first idea about that there was something different about Black women's health and white women's health didn't come into my mind that crystal clear. But it really was around abortion. In the early 70s, abortion was not available to women all over the country. And I was working at the University of Florida. I'm really a special education teacher by profession, but by training. And our chief was a Quaker who asked, I was in the Department of Psychiatry. He asked me and Julie Lever to do a presentation on what was happening with women around reproductive rights. And so I was scared to do it because I knew I had to talk about abortion and I knew what my mama was going to think about me. And so, white women pulled me to the side and said, listen, you're a grown woman now. You're on your own. You got to put on your big girl panties. Your boss told you to do something and you got to do it. So I did.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, we talked about what the situation was and all that. And I remember saying something about we didn't have equal access, some vague kind of thing I said. But what happened is that after that, women started coming to me and Judy and Margaret Parrish asking us how could they get abortions. Well, we didn't have any idea how they could get an abortion. We didn't know nothing about that. But when people come and they think you're the expert, you become the expert. And so we found out that we could send them to New York City to the clergy consultation, a group of Catholic priests who help women get abortions from the Women's Center. We gave that to white women. They were able to do it. But then a black woman came, and we're going to give her the phone number and tell her about going to New York. And she looked at me, she said, I don't know nobody in New York. I ain't got no money to get to New York. We had nothing for her. And a couple of months later, she died from a self-induced abortion. And that was my first wake up as to you can have something, you can have a service, but if I can't get it, as far as I'm concerned, you don't have it. Then later we got involved and we opened up the Gainesville Women's Health Center in 1974, abortion clinic and first trimester abortion clinic and Well Woman GYN Center. Black women were over 50% of the women coming in to get abortions. And we were not sneaking around getting it, holding our heads down. We were coming in with our husbands, our mothers, and parents were bringing in their daughters, etc. But women did not come back black women did not come back for the well woman care. That was a concern. And we opened up the birthplace in 1978, freestanding birthplace with midwifery services. And I understood why black women didn't use that service very much because it was cash only and most people had insurance. But I learned so much at the birth center. I could talk about the birth center and the Gainesville Women's Health Center like nauseam. I mean, those were just incredible experiences for me. And I was fortunate to participate in around 100 births. So, you learn a lot. You learn about life when you learn about birth. And it's like Nashira is doing my dream work. I mean, it is just nothing like it. So I always talk about birth and abortion. I always have. I always will. They are on the same coin. They are all part of our lives. And I don't like single issues. We are not single issue people. We are multi issues, and birth people need to talk about abortion just like abortion people need to talk about birth, as far as I'm concerned. Where I think I really started to understand Black women's health was when I was working in a bulk ed program. I left the birthing center. I went to Santa Fe Community College, just right in Gainesville, and I was working with these Black women who were in a CEDAR program. And I noticed they were being paid minimum wage to come to school, but they were not coming. So I had the first opportunity to call them in to say, well, just why aren't you coming to school? And it was there that I learned about our health issues, that these were young women. They were hypertensive. They had far too many children. One woman was like 20 years old and she had like 3 children. And I said, well, why do you have all these children? She said, well, my mama had me as a teenager and I wanted to leave home, so I got pregnant, had a baby so I could get a place on my own. I said, well, there are other ways to leave home. And she said, yeah, but that was the only way I knew. So I found out all these health issues that were affecting young women. And I think that's where the term Black women's health became coined in my mind. And I was on the board of the National Women's Health Network. We would have board meetings in various cities and have these educational programs that Black women should want to come hear the information, but none came. But I learned when we put the word Black in front of health, we knew who we were talking to. And that's what made the difference. So I'm going to skip past to Just one last thing around the abuse. I'm not gonna go into the depths of the details of abuse of black women's bodies because you got Dorothy Roberts coming, who knows all of who will tell you all of that kind of thing. But my first taste of it was in Atlanta. We had a network board meeting, and a network announced a class action suit against Upjohn for Depo-Provera. And when that thing hit the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, our small office, our staff of 2 people, me and Shay Youngblood, God rest her dead, we were flooded with calls from black women who had taken Depo-Provera. They had not signed consent forms. Most had gained extraordinary amounts of weight. They were hypertensive, their hair was falling out, they were losing their libido, all these abuses. They had no idea of that. Um, then we were in Atlanta, which was an absolute right place for us to be. I have to tell you that all of this work was in divine order. Everything I needed to have fell in place. I would go talk to this person, they say you need to go talk to this person, they give me the name of 5 or 10 more people. I couldn't get through the list because Atlanta was full of resources. Atlanta was just so wonderful. Black folks in high places who had power, who could pick up a pen and make things happen was what was for us. So Atlanta was just the perfect place. We organized Spelman College was the perfect place. I was invited to come speak at Spelman for Health Careers, and I hadn't been on Spelman's campus ever. And my mother used to always say, my mother's another subject, but anyway, she used to always say, well, she was a wonderful woman. A lot of people in here know my mother in experience, Gigi. But she used to tell me they have more colleges in Atlanta black colleges in Atlanta than they have in the whole state of Florida. And so Spelman College was always going up there with Fisk University, which were our, go-to schools. But anyway, I finished speaking at Spelman and I'm walking down the corridor and there was a Harriet Tubman corridor. Sojourner Truth Way, and all of these places. And in 1975, I attended this big conference that Our Bodies Ourselves put on at Harvard, who they didn't know what was going on. But, women from all over the world were talking, all over the country were talking about health. And so right in that moment, Spirit hit me and said, this is where you should have something for black women. And don't you know, I told Julie Narcissian about Bodies Ourselves. She said, my best friend just was made provost at Spelman. Let me call her. I went and met with Barbara Carter, Beverly Guy Sheftoff, who's still there, Pauline Drake, and bam, 2 years later, it was there. Spelman was the perfect host. The only money that passed hands was the money that I paid for the food. So in 1983, in June, 3rd week in June, we convened the first national conference on black women's health issues. We thought we'd have 200 to 300 women come. We had over 2,000. And we didn't know what we were doing, y'all. We were a planning committee of 20-some women from all over the country. We didn't have the internet, and we didn't have all this copy, all these things you all got now for getting the word out. We had the mimeograph machine. We had black and white print. And we had the most important thing that was called word of mouth.
Yeah.
And the fact that we had a planning committee of 22 black women from all over the country who went back to their local places. The last thing I'm going to tell you about, there's a ton more, y'all, that, you can ask me questions, ask me anything. I'm just giving you just some highlights of how the thing got started. We knew that we needed to do more work around getting black women to talk about abortion. We were still kind of silent. So we were able to pull together, I remember NCNW, remember that program we had? Hattie Spellman with Miss Height, with June, I can't remember. I can't remember.
Jewel Jackson McKay.
Yeah, Joe Jackson McCabe, yeah. And all of them it was big to stand up in front of all of us and pledge that their organizations, even the big black organizations, would get off of their silence and that they were for reproductive rights. I think that's what we were calling it then. I don't know. We're going through so many names. But at least they were verbally saying it. And then we came out with the We Remember statement.
Yep.
Then we came out later on with a big announcement with a whole ton of us signed on the Washington Post around abortion rights and said, you all can get all that. It's all in history. And go over to, you got the big archives here. It's got everything. You go read that for yourself. But what we did that was the heart of our work, which is the last thing I want to talk about, is we formed self-help groups that were sort of based, sort of like the white women's consciousness raising groups, and we couldn't say the word feminism with black women because black women say that's white women's stuff. So we use empowerment. But we came together and we told our stories.
Yep.
I still want you to use this as an organizing technique. You come together, you tell the stories of your life, because that is where you learn how you need to organize and what the issues are. Don't assume that as an organizer, you know what people need. You don't know what they need. All you need to know is you don't know.
Period.
And that you need to find out. And the telling of the stories, establish confidentiality. I can tell you later how you do all that kind of thing. But what we need now, y'all, the black women are pretty much together with this organizing and reaching each other and reaching us at all income levels. We got that. White women do not have that. I do not understand why you all don't organize across class. You have to do it. Don't leave all those women to the Trump people. You know their husbands are beating them. You know what's going on in those families. You know they're having a rough time. They need to learn about reproductive justice and the work, and they need to know how to stand up. And y'all need to overcome whatever kind of thing you got going on. And if you want to know, when I said this at Smith last year, then Paltrow wrote me and told me, she said, Byllye, every time you say that, I think you're talking to me. and so she sent me what she's done. She's done the organizing. So I said, okay then. I wasn't talking to you specifically, but I was. And I said, well, is it okay if I tell the white women who are scared to do it that they can call you and you can tell them how to do it? And she said, absolutely, yeah. But, this is serious.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole group of people that's missing from this puzzle that y'all need to reach. And white women are real okay with going over into the housing projects and organizing low-income black women and doing this for them. Go do it for yourself. Down your color line, you get a different understanding. Because the poorest white person think that anything they can do is better than the best black person in the world, and that needs to be unhooked. Okay? So I'm going to close with, help me with his name, Dázon? Labi Safray. These words I want you to, let me just remember. This is a brother sings this song from South Africa. However, Dázon just informed me this morning that there's a sister who sings it a lot better. I'm not going to sing for y'all. I'm going to read the words to you. But let us carry these words. We have been in this place before, not this specific place, because these people have been working like for 60 years to get to where they are now. But we've been in a place of hardship before. Let's not go under a rock and say all is lost. Let's not give up hope. Let's continue to fight. Let's continue to organize across generations. I was so glad Olivia came and sat at our table.
Yeah.
I just want to say, welcome to the movement, sister. Stay here. We need you. We need more. I don't know how old you are. You look young to me. But, we need the young people. We need the young people. His words are, the higher you build your barriers, the taller I become. The further you take my rights away, the faster I will run. You can't deny me. You can decide to turn your face away, no matter, cause there's something inside so strong. I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought my pride was gone. Oh no, there's something inside so strong. Ashe.
Thank you so much. And that was such a perfect timing of doing this. You weren't even in excess of the allotted time by very much at all. So you did it. So I just want to applaud that. Next, we're going to hear from Dázon Dixon Diallo, and she's going to speak about an Afrofuturist theory of She-Patriation.
Yes.
Heavy duty.
Get your notepads ready.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure this theory came up in either a drunken or high moment with Loretta Ross.
Someone said or both.
100%. And it is also one of my favorite songs, Byllye, so I'll sing it for you later.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead and hit it real quick right now.
The higher you build your barriers, the taller I become. The farther you take my rights away, the faster I will run. You can deny me. You can decide to turn your face away. No matter, because there's something inside so strong. I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my pride was gone. Oh no, something inside so strong. Oh, something inside so strong. Thank you. All right. So, you know what? To go future, I am going to start right where you kind of left.
Okay.
In 1983, I was on the campus of Spelman College doing my work study job between my first and second year as a student at Spelman. And I was touring a prospective family on campus, hot summer day in June, and I literally see like Angela Davis and June Jordan walking that way, and Paula Giddings and Sweet Honey in the Rock walking that way. And I dropped that family back at the admissions office and played hooky for my job for the rest of the week, because that was a seminal week of the National Conference on Black Women's Health on my campus. And so while Virginia Dixon is my birth mother, Byllye Y. Avery is my movement mother. I love you. I was 17, just turning 18, and within a year, I was working at the Feminist Women's Health Center. So I also was a part of the anti-apartheid movement on my campus. And while I was a student at Spelman, we had the advent, especially in terms of recognizing it in women, we had the advent of the AIDS epidemic, which we also now know as the HIV epidemic. So I'm working at Feminist. I got my anti-apartheid. This is my fight against racism, because I'm supposedly in post-civil rights at that point. I've got my Black women's shoes, my foundation, my groundation. And for some reason, between the HIV story and the reproductive rights story, Black women were lost. and therefore came SisterLove. So as I've been doing this work now for a very, very long time, one thing that was made clear to me from 83 forward, and I don't want to forget the fact that somewhere like a little bit, like 4 years later, thank you, Byllye, you also brought me my very, very, very best friend in life. Because 4 years later, after the first national conference on Black women's health, Loretta J. Ross at Howard University hosted the first ever national conference on women of color and reproductive rights.
Right.
And that's where we met and been joined at both hips ever since. We didn't even meet in Atlanta. So there are a few things that I've learned along the way, and I'm not very biased because I think it's all fact and it's all true because I believe it. And that is that there's not a single, how did I just write it for myself? There's not a single person, not a single human being before, now, and future who cannot attribute some aspect of their life to Black women. Not a single person. There's that quote I hear often that Black women are the closest thing to God on earth.
Woo!
And the reason being is because Black women gave birth to humanity. We're in everybody's DNA.
Yep.
Even the ones that hate us, want to erase us,
Yep.
and wish that they never came from us. And so there's this ongoing argument about Black women needing rest, Black women tired, Black women carrying the water for everybody else, Black women coming to rescue everybody else. And this is a hard one to own. But when you give birth, when you become a parent, whether you gave birth or not, that's almost a commitment that whether you asked for it, whether you chose it, whether you were conscious about it or not, it is the lot in life that you have as an individual. Sorry to say, Black women, but it is the lot that we have for humanity. So it's not about saving them despite the bullshit. It's about being what we were destined, ordained, and by the universe delivered to be. The planet will not survive without us. But here's what's clear. We can't save nobody if we don't save ourselves.
Yes.
And so the thought that I have is that for all Blackness that considers itself femme, that there is a charge for us to get organized. What is his name? He's got other problems, but from a Black Power standpoint, he said a lot of wonderful things. When Kwame Ture says, you know it, right? That Black people are not poor, we're poorly organized. And a part of that is how separate we are. And I mean separate not only inside the United States in many different ways, but on the planet. And I'm very much sure that what I'm calling the science of solidarity will show forth and tell us that when we get organized across this planet and we restore the continent that we call home, that this planet will survive another many, many millennia. The fact that Africa itself is breaking, right? That in a million years it's going to create a whole new ocean, means that we have a duty to protect all of what's there. And if you see what's happening, for example, in Burkina Faso, if you see what's happening in the Sahel region, where just to say to hell with France, there are countries that are claiming their resources, they're claiming their people, they're claiming their money, they're claiming everything that is indigenous and belongs to Africa for themselves. A lot of people might see that as decolonization, right? So I looked it up. I was like, what is the opposite of colonization? The opposite of colonization is actually not decolonization. It's repatriation.
Oh, wow.
It's returning home. Whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's spiritual, whether it's financial, whether it's technological, whether it's intellectual, whatever it is, It's about reclaiming and restoring what the continent has delivered to the planet and has been raped and rid of for centuries. And it will be Black women who do it. I look at the fact that 200 million people of African descent live off the continent, right? Plus the 1.4 billion that live on the continent. And within a few years, Black people will be 25% of this whole global population. And the median age is going to be 19.
That's what they're afraid of.
That's what they are afraid of.
Yeah.
So before, as I'm starting sort of this whole meeting with a solution already, before we get through all of the challenges that are going to really make my blood pressure rise over the next couple of days. So I'm going to stop in the current moment that we're in. It is about their greed. It is about usurping all the power that they think everybody else is going to take from them. It is about reshaping the United States in the frame of the Calhounists of the world, in the ideology that white, so-called heterosexual, patriarchal men with a lot of money are the only people who deserve to be here and make choices, right? Yes, it's about that. But to get there, they have to erase the rest of us. So this idea of cutting off foreign aid is not about this crap. We all know it's not about the economics and the savings and the whatever. We know that. Smart people do. It is truly about creating new pathways to kill people and allow people to die because our numbers aren't changing. Whereas y'all's numbers are. 75% of Uganda, one country, 75% of Uganda, the age is under the age of 35. 75%, and half of them are under 25. That's our future. And the men who are in charge are fucking it up.
Yeah.
And so if we don't bring it together, like our sister Rebecca with the Samburu tribe in eastern Kenya, right at the foot of Mount Kenya, where 30 years ago she got sick and tired of the abuse, the violence, the rapes, the child marriages, the drunken husbands taking all the wives' money and leaving families in poverty even though they're working to the bone every day. And she packed up all the women, all the children, moved across the river and said, the rest of y'all stay over there. And they have built women-only societies that are not just surviving, are thriving. So I want some more women-only zones. What I'm working towards in this theory is that it is not only the innovation in the diaspora, it's the innovation on the continent married with the innovation in the diaspora. The community engagement that we have built and developed, whether through research, whether through organizing, whether through the academic relationships with community campus, whatever it is, it also exists on the continent, but neither of us is winning without each other. That it's the insights from the diaspora and it is the historical knowledge of the indigenous women on the continent. And that the success of all of us and everybody depends on that transformational journey of us getting it right and getting it together. So we got major technology on the continent, but just for a few. 70% of Africa still don't have internet access. Can you imagine if all those young people did? We've got new banking systems that are community driven on the continent. We ain't figured that out over here. We've got communication systems that have been figured out on the continent that we still are dependent on others to have that communication. And so there are so many different ways that we can follow on with this notion of organizing in solidarity to make sure that Black women are able to thrive, because everything follows us. From the beginning to now, Black women brought you a whole health movement. There weren't other national women of color organizations before the Black Women's Health Project. Black women brought you reproductive justice. There weren't other ways of dealing with intersectionality, also brought to you by a Black woman. There weren't other ways of doing that. We lead. We do. And I don't understand how we don't get behind that leadership and watch Black women lead while we lose. November 5th, case in point.
Yeah.
So if we continue to build on what's already existing, what we're doing is continuing to foster dependency in the people who should be running this planet within the next 20, 40 years. So how do we do that differently? In my mind, of course, there's 5 elements to this, and Byllye started out with 1. Sharing our stories across this planet and finding common ground. Celebrating our differences, acknowledging and winning in those spaces where we are different and winning, but finding our way to where we are all living similar stories. A short story on this one. Long time ago, when we first got started in our work in South Africa, and there's another one, that's like your mother's story, there's a whole set aside to how do y'all get to do this for 25 plus years?
Yeah.
So we get a big grant, and we split it right down the middle with our partners on the ground in South Africa, which is what North American grantees never do. They keep all the money and they sprinkle a little bit. We split it down the middle, knowing that $250K for the other half was going to be 5 times more value at that time, 10 times more valuable locally than the $250K was for us in Atlanta.
Right.
Didn't matter. Could not get a single report though. And we're the grantee. We still got to report these numbers. Could not get a report, could not get stories, could not get the financials, could not get anything. And one of my friends who had expated to South Africa said, "Girl, you got to realize that money don't move nothing down here. It's who have you saved lately." So I thought about that, used the self-help process. We went in the group because we were fighting at that point. So we went in the group and we just started telling stories. And when I told the story about growing up in the 60s and having to visit my grandmother, who lived 12-hour drive away in South Florida, and my mother would pack up because we couldn't stop nowhere and hold on to dignity. So my mother would pack up fried chicken, boiled eggs, white bread. Some people got biscuits. My mama just put that colonial bread right in the bag. Colonial bread, Lord help me. So, yeah, y'all know who I'm talking about. And maybe some iced tea and water. I'm telling this story, and there's a South African woman who says, "Oh, y'all have scoftons too?" Scofton is a takeaway for food. Driving from Johannesburg to Cape Town to visit her grandmother, they had the same thing: fried chicken, bread, and some boiled eggs. That one story changed everything. So telling our stories matter. I've already talked about migration being the second one, regardless of how that happens mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I'm doing a Jalicia. Financially, intellectually. The third one is mutual aid, respect, and celebration. Black folks just in the United States are worth about $1.7 trillion. Black folks, African folks in the diaspora send over $90 billion to the continent on an annual basis. Why do we need US aid? Why should they give it is a different question. But why do we need it is the real one. Fourth, women-only zones, which I've already spoken about, building communities that are centered in the lived experiences of Black women, because you all know when you fix it for us, you fix it for everybody.
Absolutely.
So when you build communities and hold neighborhoods that are based on our lived experiences, our safety, our security, our economic opportunities, our leadership, all of that, then we start to change things. And the fifth one is our leadership and our legacy of love. That is what will seal the deal at the end of the day through reproductive justice, through voter cohesion, through reproductive technology, science, and understanding what that means. But not only that, but being a part of it, designing it, creating it, leading it, and telling the story of it.
Absolutely.
Movement building, the exchanging culture, and affinity organizing. Affinity organizing means I'm talking about what I call horizontal diversity, where we might all be Black, but we all different. So making sure, for example, that we unravel these distinctions of how and who gets to live and die based on their sex, their gender, their gender identity, who they love, and who they choose to parent. That all of these things matter. Can you imagine if half of the continent had women in leadership of the countries? The resources would stay local. The trade would be fairer. And not only that, the products would be so much better for our children. The land would belong to our posterity because we're invested in that in ways nobody else is. So that's what She-Patriation as a theory sounds like, feels like, and looks like. And by the way, regardless of how long it takes to do it, it's possible. It is very possible. And I'm ready for y'all to come on the ride.
Yes.
Hello. Keep that extra leg.
Yeah, some of that colonial bread was baked on the campus of Howard University. Just saying. And if you've ever walked on that campus in the 80s, as Loretta and I did, you know what it smelled like. It wafted all through the air. I'm sorry, I had to just mention that.
That's funny because Sunbeam was around the corner
had
from
it down-
Clark Atlanta
okay,
University, so
so,
you can smell that.
Again, HBCUs, I'm sorry, but you know. All right. I guess we'll continue in the order unless you want to go in the order in the program. Should we go in the order you're seated? Do you have a preference, ladies?
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay,
I'm
so
ready
I'm
to go
going to,
last.
next we're going to have Dr. Crystal Fleming of Smith College, who's going to speak about Octavia Butler,
Yes.
Technofascism, and the future of human freedom.
Oh my God.
What do you think?
I'm sorry, did I mix you all up? I'm so sorry.
No, you didn't mix us up. We're just wondering, should I go last?
Yeah.
Would you like to? I was just going by the program. I was going by your seating.
Yeah,
Rather I go by the
yeah.
program.
Yeah,
So
I'll go
sorry about I misunderstood your decision. So Emily Galpern is going to go next.
First disruption of the day.
Hey, we work it out. Who's going to speak about legacies of oppression, building the world we want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It is such an honor to be here in this room and to be on this panel. I can't even tell you. Among leaders from the Black Women's Health Movement, leaders and founders, and of the Reproductive Justice Movement. I met Loretta about 20 years ago when I started working at the Center for Genetics and Society in the Bay Area in California. And Byllye, I don't know if you remember me, but I met you at a conference. You know, you came out and you and Dázon, Jeanette. I have learned so much from all of you, and I wouldn't be here today with the perspective that I have without all the work that you've done and many other Black women and women of color and other folks in the movement. So all of you and all of you here are my sheroes and they rose. So it's really good to be with you. So what a world we're in right now. I mean, just being here gives me a lot of strength and courage to keep working collectively towards the reproductive futures that we want to see and live in. So using a reproductive justice perspective, we can see the full landscape of reproduction. Who's encouraged to reproduce, who's celebrated for doing so, who's given the resources to do it, and who's prevented or policed or punished to do so. So we've got the spectrum of state reproductive oppression on the one hand, with coerced sterilization, abortion restrictions and bans, and criminalization of pregnant women and pregnant people. And then we've got an unregulated, expensive, high-tech market of reproductive technologies on the other hand, with limited access and minimal attention to health and rights concerns. And Loretta really laid out some of the foundational questions and issues about reproductive and genetic technologies that I want to build on. So the entire landscape of reproduction and family formation reflects oppressive beliefs and policies that already exist in our society. And as I was saying, some people are supported in their decisions to reproduce with the help of these interventions, while others are deemed unfit to have children or have more children and are denied the ability to make the reproductive decisions they want to make. So the focus of my talk today is on reproductive and genetic technologies, one of the core issues that we're looking at as we're in the 21st century around reproductive justice futurisms. And I wanted to place these technologies along the spectrum of reproduction where state policy and the market are not siloed, and Loretta mentioned this earlier, these are all part of one picture when looking at it through a reproductive justice frame. So to get more specific, if anyone's wondering, well, what exactly, when I talk about the work that I do, people say, what do you do? And I take this deep breath, I'm like, okay, it's not an easy question to answer. And I say I work on issues related to genetic and reproductive technologies from a reproductive justice, disability rights, LGBTQ perspective, other social justice and human rights approaches. And I just watch, as soon as I say reproductive and genetic technologies, people's eyes glaze over. But we're talking about IVF, in vitro fertilization, egg and sperm donation, also known as gamete donation, surrogacy, and genetic testing of embryos before in vitro fertilization. People are familiar with genetic testing, prenatal testing if someone is pregnant, but we're also talking about genetic testing in the assisted reproductive technologies arena before IVF, which may be someone who's trying to get pregnant themselves, or if it's a surrogate who's going to carry the child. So other speakers throughout the next few days are going to delve deeper into these specific topics. I'm not going to get into the details. I want to give more of an overview of these technologies and others on the horizon and related issues. I want to talk about what these technologies make possible and where they raise concerns. So I think most of us are familiar with what they make possible. They make it possible to create, for many more people, to create families. LGBTQ folks, single people, and people with clinical infertility. And they build broader support to value family in all its forms, to really value family in all its forms. And access, therefore, is key in terms of the costs. It's very expensive, and ensuring use of the technologies without discrimination, and assurance that intended parents are legally recognized whether they're genetic parents or not. And this is particularly crucial with one or more LGBTQ plus parents whose rights have never been guaranteed and are even more under threat in the current political environment. So access is a concern that most people are familiar with, and it's a vital one. It's important for us to talk about. And I want to broaden the range of concerns to health and rights. And that means everyone involved. And Loretta referenced this earlier too, about kind of not privileging anybody's rights over anyone else's in this landscape. So we're talking about the health and rights of egg donors and surrogates, and of people born through these technologies, of intended parents using the technologies. So all the parties involved. But unfortunately, and not surprisingly, in this multi-billion-dollar global industry, fertility industry that Jalicia referenced, profit is the bottom line and not people, which I don't think anybody in this room is surprised by, but I think it's important to call out because a lot of people are using the technologies to create families, and that's their focus, but what's undergirding the development and the marketing of the technologies is profit by the industry. And the focus for them is what will give the greatest success rates, rather than the policies and practices that will best safeguard the health of egg donors, that will best guarantee that all surrogates can make all health and welfare decisions about their bodies and their pregnancies, that will ensure that people born through egg or sperm donation or surrogacy will know their genetic and biological origins, and that will guarantee legal recognition and protections for LGBTQ plus intended parents. So these are just a few of the areas that are undermined when profit takes precedence over humanity. It's a market selling technologies, and that means it reflects biases that already exist in society. So in this fertility market, we see that some people's lives are more valued than others, some people's families are more valued than others, and some people's genes are more valued than others. And Loretta said one of the E words, eugenics, and who and what is valued come from eugenic beliefs that have permeated our society for, well, probably from the beginning of the colonization of this land and other places as well. And so eugenics, I think a lot of us basically know what it means, but sometimes are thinking, what exactly is it again? And it's the belief that certain groups of people are fit to reproduce and others are not, and that only people with certain traits are worthy of being born. And these beliefs influence policy and practice across the reproductive spectrum. So what I was talking about before, who is allowed, encouraged, and supported to have children, and who is discouraged, prevented, and criminalized for having children. And the RJ movement has continually called out eugenic ideology carried out by the state. For example, one of the most known and prominent abuses by the state has been coerced sterilization of more than 60,000 people in the 20th century. And we know that that was not the end of coerced sterilization of marginalized groups. It continues today in the 21st century. So that's state-controlled or state-coerced eugenic, state-implemented eugenic practices or policies and practices. And eugenic beliefs also influence the development and use of assisted reproduction. And that's something a lot of people don't really want to look at, because we're not talking about the individual decisions people make. We don't want to interfere with individual reproductive decisions people make. But we want to look at why are those the decisions that are expected, or what is underneath the decisions that intended parents make when they're deciding which embryos to use, et cetera, in this case of assisted reproduction. And so we've got state-coerced or state-sponsored eugenics, and then we've got market-based kind of consumer eugenics. So I'm talking about genetic testing and screening and selecting or deselecting which embryos to implant with in vitro fertilization. And there's been a lot today already, and obviously in the reproductive justice movement, about solidarity and intersectionality and working together across movements. And this is an area where some people might think, oh, the disability rights and the reproductive rights movements, not so much the justice movements, because they get it. But in the more mainstream reproductive rights and disability rights movements, some people might think, oh, is there going to be tension or opposition around the issue of genetic testing and screening? But the disability rights and justice advocates that I work with are very clear on the need for safe and legal abortion and people's ability to control their reproductive lives, 100%. No question. But there is a need to question the assumption that it's better to have a child without a disability or a genetic condition. And it's clear that it's vital to provide comprehensive genetic counseling when intended parents, prospective parents are given more information about the condition that, if they carry the pregnancy to term, or if it's surrogacy pregnancy, the intended parents have an understanding of what is the disability or genetic condition to meet people and families who have that genetic condition or disability. And the statistics show that people are much less likely to terminate in those cases. And we're not trying to get people not to terminate. What we're trying to do is have people have more information, so they have a more comprehensive picture, so they can make the decisions based on more accurate information. And because there's a stigma that permeates society that we're all very well aware of around disability, and that it's better not to have a child with a disability. And that's part of the eugenic framework. And there's an increasing number of tests offered. So many tests, intended parents get overwhelmed. They must let you know all those tests were going to happen. It's hard to make decisions about what they want to do with these embryos and about whether to continue or terminate a pregnancy if there is one in the case of assisted reproduction. So we're looking at really revisioning and building on the work that people, including folks in this room like Rosemary Robin-Thompson and Adrienne Ash, who's no longer with us, and others who have done around Marcia Saxton and around fully standing in support of abortion rights, and also really understanding value of lives with every single person, including every person with a disability or genetic condition. So, okay, I want to sort of shift gears a little bit. Before January 20th, we were already in an environment with multiple oppressions raging in general and in particular around reproduction. And now, as we unfortunately know, we're in an era of authoritarianism. And all of these oppressions are intensified. And the good thing is, as Loretta said about hope, and Dázon said about possibility, and Byllye said about solidarity, that we are more in a position to challenge this than we have been in the past. Controlling reproduction and families, controlling women and trans and non-binary and gender expansive people, these are part of an authoritarian playbook. We know this. And eugenics is too. We look at the oligarchs, as Crystal will talk about, which I hadn't heard that term before, who are saying there's certain types of people we want to see in this world. We want to get some people out of the country. We want to make sure some people aren't born. We want to make sure other people aren't born. And there are some segments of this pronatalist movement pressing for people like them to have a lot more babies. And they want to enforce traditional, antiquated gender roles, and these are very oppressive gender roles, and trying to destroy feminism and empowerment and trans rights and abortion access, all of which further entrench white supremacy and profit at any expense, because that's really what they're after, is to keep their billionaire class. So there's also a small group of people who want to see technology that would seemingly, though not necessarily, allow for even greater selection of the type of child that they would have. So this is called heritable genome editing, or what's commonly referred to in the media as designer babies, which would likely exacerbate inequities that already exist and also entrench them even further. So we're here to Reproductive Justice Futurism's convening think tank. All the things I just mentioned are part of reproductive dystopia. And I think some of us feel like we're in, a science fiction novel. Some people, and I think among Black women who have been part of a reproductive dystopia for a long time in terms of the way that their bodies and their lives have been treated from enslavement continually through now, this reproductive dystopia is not part of any of the reproductive futurisms that we're aiming to create. So we're faced with a dilemma. Loretta brought up the issue of regulation and regulation of the fertility industry and how severely that is needed because of all of the concerns and issues I was raising. We want the fertility industry to be accountable and to be required to prioritize the health and rights of all involved. But we have no pathway for regulation right now to make sure it happens based on reproductive justice principles in this current political context. Even before this administration, it's hard to think about how are we going to have regulation, and a lot of us have had ideas and ways we want to promote that, but there's the question of how do we make sure it's not used against us and the people that we're most trying to safeguard? How do we make sure it's not co-opted? Loretta was saying the right are the ones who are saying they're against eugenics, and they're saying the left is for eugenics. They're co-opting our language, they're co-opting our strategies. So how do we create a world we want to see around reproduction, where we have sovereign right to our bodies, to control our reproductive lives and our futures, to ensure all methods of reproduction prioritize the health and rights of everyone involved, to support all families to live and thrive, and to value the lives of people with disabilities and all people. So we know an RJ frame recognizes the connection between the public and the private spheres of reproduction. It shows the impacts on women, on trans people, on non-binary folks, gender expansive folks, queer people, on Black and brown and indigenous and immigrant communities, and on young people. RJ strategies give us the tools to challenge state control of reproduction and counter profit motivations of a privatized fertility industry. And RJ gives us the tools to envision the reproductive justice futures we want to see. To address the full range of topics: health, rights, access, inequity, eugenics. So, as Byllye said, we need to do movement work within our demographic movements, and we need to build solidarity across movements. We need to do both levels of that work across social justice and human rights movements. Because I was saying there wasn't really a pathway exactly on how the regulation could look. Even if we know what regulation we want, how do we make that work in a way that's based on reproductive justice values and principles and make sure it does what we're trying to have it do? But in the reproductive justice futurisms realm, there are multiple solutions that we haven't imagined yet. And we're more likely to create them with many millions of minds committed to moving forward in the same direction. I mean, I just went to Loretta's book talk a couple weeks ago in San Francisco. So happy to hear her talk about an issue that's been so close and important in her life, and that I had kind of seen some of the emails but hadn't really delved deeply into, and to understand that to move forward in the same direction, we can't all think the same.
Right.
We can't all have the same way of approaching things. We won't have that. And you know, Bernice Johnson Reagan was talking about being in coalition means that we have to work together with people who disagree with us, and we have to learn to do that. And I count myself among the many who find that extremely challenging to do. And we're not just talking about like reaching folks who may be on the right now. We're talking about like each other at our own tables and in the room and in our families and our relationships and our communities. But I have confidence that we will win this battle, especially being in this room and among all of you and all that you bring to this fight. We are visionary, we are creative, we are hopeful, we are brilliant, and we are very powerful.
Absolutely.
We will not be divided. We can't be divided in this time right now. We just can't, or we are not going to win. But we will win as we head toward the reproductive future, justice futures that we know are possible.
Ashe.
That's great.
Thank you.
The threads already through this panel, and I just had one of these moments because I arrived here at 5:30 and rushed to get to my hotel room to give my lecture last night on coalition politics. And guess what we read? Bernice Johnson Reagan, which I've been teaching for 30 years, okay, to public health students. And yes, if you haven't read that, it's within the anthology. Which anthology I'm thinking, but it's in, I'll make sure everyone knows about it, so I'll share that later. But thank you for that, Emily. So now we will get to Dr. Crystal Fleming at Smith College. And again, her discussion will be on Octavia Butler, Technofascism and the Future of Human Freedom.
Yes. Good morning. First, let me just say I am so honored to be in community with you. I bear witness to the love in this room. I'm meeting many of you for the first time. Some of you I know, some of you I've only seen on a Zoom screen, but we are meeting finally. So it's such an honor. I am here because Loretta asked me to be here. And when she first asked me to be here, I was like, are you sure that I have something that needs to be said in this space? And I'm not saying that out of a place of false modesty. I have a healthy ego. I do. I know what I know, but I also know that I've had a lot of catching up to do in terms of trying to understand developments in this political moment, the particular political moment that we're in. And so I trust Loretta. So I'm here because I trust you. Everybody's talking about 1983, 1985. I'll tell you about 1981.
Okay.
Okay.
I was born. So when I say I am honored to be here, I mean it. That's what was happening for me in 1981. The other reason I'm here, and my remarks will speak to question number 2 about what we need to know, and I'm including myself in the we, what we need to know. To be very honest with you, I'm here because my ancestors have been speaking. I'm sorry I missed the ancestral altar work this morning. Partly it's because I'm not a morning person, and also because I had to finish my own altar work. Seriously, it's only been the last few months that I have been integrating ancestral work into my spiritual practice. I've been drawing a lot on the work of Malidoma Some and Subonfu Some, and they were from Burkina Faso, the Bagara tribe, so I found myself maybe 4.5 weeks ago feeling quite distressed with the state of things. And in this new ancestral practice, in front of my altar, asking, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Y'all got to help me understand what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
Because there are things I understand and there's much that I do not. And so they've been talking and connecting me to folks. People been sending books in the mail. You know, I get texts in the morning, you know, from new friends and old friends and conversations that are being created. And so I'm sharing some of what I have been learning. I am a critical race Black feminist scholar. I am not anyone, you talk about eyes glazing over, talking about the oligarchies. Like, I understand critiques of oligarchies and class warfare. I understand that. But when Bernie would be talking about, we got to get the oligarchs, my eyes would glaze over. I do not care about Silicon Valley in particular. I don't even like San Francisco. I hope y'all had a good time at the book event, and my wife would be upset because she's from the Bay Area. Listen, so what I'm sharing with you is like, I've had to read a lot of stuff I don't like to read. A lot of these tech bro fascists, they're into like Lord of the Rings, you know, and I'm into sci-fi. We'll talk about Octavia Butler, but I don't care about no Lord of the Rings. They're all obsessed with this, with even some of the names of the companies that are behind and profiting from the current authoritarian techno-fascist takeover. Palantir, co-founded by Peter Thiel, that is named after some Lord of the Rings bullshit. So we're going to get into it, and with Octavia, right, in the midst of our reflections, and that part is there too, for many reasons, but one, because of Loretta's reminders, constant reminders that we are not just here to talk about what we're fighting and what we're facing, but about the imagination and the vision that we have. And Octavia's work has been so formative for so many of us. Did anyone have a chance to meet her? I never had a chance. Okay. To be in her presence on a physical plane, but I've been in her imagination. We'll come to some of what I think is important from her work that we can think with. So a couple of things about that I want to highlight about this techno-fascist takeover. I think there are several reasons why we need to know certain names and certain aspects of their agenda that I think are not well known. One has to do with the scope of what their nightmarish vision entails. Two has to do with the time that we have to respond. We ain't got as much time as I think some who are not paying as close attention believe we do. Three, it's the nature of the strategies that we need, not just to survive, but to build the world that we want. And that's why reproductive justice has to be at the center, because reproductive justice organizers know something about fighting fascism, know something about survival, know something about community building and diaspora and all of that. And finally, it's important because we need to think about the kind of imagination and consciousness we will need to create the world with us in it, and not the world that these Silicon Valley tech bros want, right? Which is a world without us.
That's right.
And it's a world that Octavia Butler knew well, because she paid attention to her society. And it wasn't even speculative. She just looked around and said, what's happening, right? And if it continues to happen, what will 2020 look like, right? She knew, and I think she was adamant that she wasn't a prophet. You know, she's like, I pay attention, okay? So I also want to use as an anchor some of what Loretta has taught us about reproductive justice theory, and how, in her words, it examines the meanings assigned to reproductive relations and externally imposed policies and practices. Externally imposed policies and practices. So what are some of these externally imposed policies and practices, right, that have been implemented since January 20th, that have a long history and did not start on January 20th, but are moving at a pace and acceleration and with an agenda that some of us are aware of, but that many people are not paying attention to. We've already heard many of the elements mentioned, but I do want to specifically call out Doge,
Yeah.
the so-called department. It's not even a real department, right, of government efficiency. We know it's BS. That's not what it is.
Correct.
No.
But specifically the tech aspect of the illegal seizure of our data, the weaponization of that data for their enrichment and our impoverishment. And of course, Elon Musk is a very public face of this, and his army of digital mercenaries. These are not kids. I see headlines about, you know, the kids of Doge. These are not kids. But, you know, people who are not Black, right, get a kind of coverage that the rest of us, right, who are Black do not, right? So they're kids. No, they're not. They're very dangerous. And they're adults. The mass purging of civil service and the dismantling of the administrative state, the all-out war on human rights here and abroad, the weaponization of federal grants and targeted attacks on educational institutions, historical erasure, but also the removal of women and Black people and people of color from positions of leadership. Now the institutionalization of a new McCarthyism, not just banned words and banned books, but banned research and fields, particularly fields that can be associated in any way with DEIA and misinformation about that. And the A needs to be said, right, as disability activists remind us, because they're facing an all-out war on disabled persons, and the dismantling of any kind of protections is a part of this agenda. The scapegoating of trans people. And this dehumanization of trans people that's being used because of its popularity, the popularity of transphobia, used as a kind of Trojan horse to seduce people into giving up their own human rights without realizing that that's what they're being invited into. And so we could go on and on and on, right? And I do also want to call out the specific instance of what happened this weekend with the targeted kidnapping of Mahmoud Khalil, recent graduate of Columbia, green card holder, okay? Steve Bannon, one of the architects of the MAGA movement, has publicly said, right, in a recent interview with the New York Times, but that the goal is to flood the zone, to overwhelm us with these, you know, daily, this onslaught of horrific news, of these policies, right, and ideologies that are being enacted at a dizzying pace. So in the rest of my remarks, I want to contextualize some of this in connection to the rise of a new iteration of fascism, as well as the influence of something called, some of you may be familiar with, the neo-reactionary movement. The neo-reactionary movement. This is something I was not familiar with until quite recently. Show of hands, has anyone in the room heard of or read of a motherfucker named Curtis Yarvin?
Only because of Loretta.
Okay, yes. A few of you, right? Most of you have not. Most of us have not. You know, in conversations I've been having with colleagues and friends like Loretta and others, realizing that most of us had not heard of Curtis Yarvin. We need to know who this mofo is.
Okay.
Because he is the man behind Project 2025. He is the man who has been what some call the house philosopher of this right-wing anti-democracy movement that has swept Silicon Valley in its grip. We need to know not just his name, right, but some of the agenda he's been publicly writing about for a couple of decades. And I want to clarify what I mean by this term in the title of technofascism. In her study of Japanese modernity, Stony Brook historian Janice Mimura defines technofascism as, quote, a new form of authoritarian rule in which the total estate is fused with the military and bureaucratic planning agencies and controlled by technocrats. Controlled, right, by these technocrats.
What was her name again?
This is Janice Mimura, Mimura, historian at Stony Brook University, which is where I worked for 13 years before coming to Smith. So as a concept and framework for understanding power, technofascism helps us understand why Elon Musk is now the face of the White House.
Yeah.
Some of you may have recalled, did you see Elon on a stage? I think it was on the inauguration day, wearing a black baseball cap. I mean, we've seen him a lot of places. And he said, "I'm dark MAGA."
Dark MAGA. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell is dark MAGA? Dark MAGA is another phrase for the neo-reactionary movement. So we need to understand what that agenda entails, because it is entirely opposed to any notion of human rights, including anything related to reproductive justice, of course. And Musk, again, is but the public face of an entire regime of oligarchs and Silicon Valley aligned technocrats that are seizing control, not just of this country, but of the global political economy.
That's right.
Implementing eugenics, dismantling human rights, the rule of law, undermining democratic institutions worldwide, stealing taxpayer money, and making sure that they pay almost nothing in terms of taxes.
Yeah.
And that through offshore financial wealth management, which I'll come back to in just a moment. I will say about the term oligarchs, that was new to me as well. I discovered it through the work of a sociologist at Dartmouth named Brooke Harrington. She didn't coin it, but she writes about it and talks about it. I'll come back to it in a moment. Y'all remember did y'all see this? I'm not on X anymore, but I saw the image from the White House, AI image of Donald Trump as a king.
Yeah.
Crown and all that. Some people dismissed it as a joke.
Oh no.
And we know it's not a joke. So in order to grasp the significance of that image and that claim of him being a king, we have to understand that he's literally carrying out a plan crafted by that motherfucker Curtis Yarvin, the architect of this neo-reactionary movement. And by the way, funded, Yarvin has been by Peter Thiel. Okay, who is the guy who chose our vice president?
Right.
Okay, and Yarvin is very explicit. Another South African, that part. Elon Musk and Peter Thiel spent a significant portion of his childhood in South Africa in a whites-only school. And so Yarvin has been very explicit, and the neo-reactionary movement dudes are very explicit about wanting to replace democracy with a dictatorship, a dictatorial monarchical rule, essentially by a CEO president. So when we see Musk and Trump together, this is Yarvin's vision. They have not been hiding it. Some of us just ain't paying attention. We have other things we've been worried about and not necessarily seeing some of this forest for the trees. So Yarvin was known, and he's been quite in the shadows, but there have been some recent high-profile pieces on him in the New York Times and the Guardian, other Nation. There's been some coverage of him. Gil Duran is a journalist, a San Francisco-based journalist, who was a comms director for Kamala Harris when she was a senator. He's been writing over the last year and a half, 2 years, increasingly about this network of oligarchs and their role in undermining our democracies and very basis of human freedom. But so he's been in the background, but he was initially known to his acolytes by his blogger name of Mencius Moldbug. Like the fact that I even have to say those words, like, why do I have to say? Because we need to be able to find his writings and understand what this man is saying. Like, it's still public. And so for decades, he had been writing under that alias about the plan for destroying democracy as we know it and installing monarchical rule. He also embraces the idea of slavery as being a good thing for Black people. What to do with poor folks? He jokes about turning them into biofuel. Okay? In writing about his roadmap to dictatorship for a second Trump presidency, Yarvin wrote the following: American voters have only one realistic option. They need to elect a president who clearly states his intention and preparedness to take over the entire American government. You remember Trump saying, dictator on day one?
Right.
It was a campaign promise, right?
Yeah.
Yarvin continues, the first job is to entirely liquidate the old unconstitutional administrative branch, not to reform the state, nor to eliminate the state, but to replace the state while it's still running without turmoil or disorder. Does this sound familiar? Mass firings of civil servants. Part of what we're seeing with the purge of civil servants and federal workers is the implementation of what Yarvin called, he had an acronym, RAGE, Retire All Government Employees, as an essential step to implementing this monarchical rule by a billionaire CEO dictator, okay? And the pace is important because in his vision, the goal is to move as quickly as possible. Just to bring it home to education, for example, we're seeing, of course, now reports of 400 million taken from this institution, 200 million, I think John Hopkins, just lost, if I'm not mistaken, 200 million, something along those lines, if not more, it could be more. Defunding higher ed, a defensive pose trying to stay out of the firing range of this is not going to work because what they're trying to do is not just come after DEI or come after certain institutions, but the most extreme version of Yarvin's vision is to eliminate higher education as we know it, to actually eliminate it. In one of his writings, he wrote that his goal was to eliminate Harvard, and Harvard is just representing higher ed and elite higher ed, by April following the inauguration. Wow. They're not going to be able to do that by April, but that gives you a sense.
Do it.
Right? Shoot for the stars, maybe get the moon is what they're trying to do, right? Shoot for April, maybe by the end of the year, maybe into the idea is they're trying to move extremely quickly. Okay, so they're aiming for the wholesale destruction of higher ed as we know it. And by the way, when I said that he joked about turning poor people into biofuel, he also jokes about killing professors. So we are dealing with a degree of inhumanity and a nightmarish imagination. A lot of these guys watched some of the same sci-fi films that some of us did, read some of the things that we did. And I'm a huge fan of The Matrix, by the way. The Wachowski sisters. I love The Matrix. I watched The Matrix and I thought, my goodness, what a fascinating reflection on identity, the meaning of human freedom, our relationship to technology and how to overcome a dependence. And these motherfuckers watched it and said, yeah, let's do that.
Yep.
Let's turn human beings into batteries, you know? So that's why we need a Butlerian imagination and not a Elon Musk, Peter Thiel imagination in order to create a future with us in it. There are a number of commentators, I'll close in a moment, but I'll say there are a number of commentators that I deeply respect who frame this current moment as a return to segregation. And to a certain degree, this is not incorrect. Christopher Rufo, another one of these leaders of this anti-democracy movement, very recently, I think just this week, did an interview where he openly said the goal is to reverse the Civil Rights Acts. And this is something that he'd been saying on social media months prior. But I actually think it's a mistake to imagine that the techno-fascists and anti-democracy extremists that we're talking about today and that have seized control of the country are primarily motivated by a desire to resegregate this country. While these techno-fascists are clearly implementing white supremacist, xenophobic, sexist policies along with class warfare, their primary goal, and the primary goal of this anti-DEI authoritarianism is not segregation. If we take neo-reactionary movement writings seriously, their aim is to replace democracy with fascist monarchical rule. Their goal is total human enslavement to corporations.
Yep.
Total human enslavement to corporations. And of course, some of us will be among the first targeted, but they're not stopping with us. They're not stopping with us. So resegregation is just a stop on that train. And explicit white supremacy and patriarchy and transphobia and xenophobia are being used to make this techno-fascist future and present seductive to the masses. So the bottom line is this: billionaire extremists in the tech industry are weaponizing racism, sexism, transphobia under the guise of pushing back against wokeness. The goal is to destroy the very idea of the human, not just human rights, the human. To destroy our understanding of our interconnection, not just with each other, but with the environment. This earth that they want to fully exploit so that they can go and colonize Mars. In her recent book, Offshore, Brooke Harrington, the sociologist I mentioned earlier at Dartmouth, frames these developments in terms of a new form of colonialism. She draws upon Amy Césaire's concept, right, of the imperial boomerang, and unveils how oligarchs and corporations have set about dismantling democracies globally, creating a political economy of lawlessness and exploitation by shielding almost all of their wealth from taxation and regulation. I asked him, I had a keynote in Philly last week, and I asked my speakers bureau to route me through New York so I can get my hair did. I'm new to this area, and I don't know, I need to go back to New York, get my hair done, okay? So I asked my hairdresser, I was like, girl, have you been paying attention? And what do you think is going on? Because my stance is not to be the one who's going to tell somebody what's going on. I was sure I had something to learn from my hairdresser. A Black woman, by the way, in case you didn't realize. And she said, she paused a long time. She paused. She took a breath and she said, they're trying to control everything, but they also want to be liked. And can I tell you, the last chapter of Brooke Harrington's book, Offshore, says exactly this. Harrington spent something like 15 years studying these oligarchs to get one of these insights. My hairdresser knew it intuitively. And probably because she's paying attention. The wanting to be liked is important because Harrington argues, and we see it, their egos are so fragile, they're so pathetic, trying so hard to be cool and failing spectacularly.
Period.
These are some of the goofiest motherfuckers I've ever seen. Okay? My goodness. Anyway, the wanting to be liked. Harrington argues that part of the strategy, right, because the pathway to regulation, you know, it's evaporating, shifting under our feet, but they can be shamed. That's why they want to destroy civil society, our ability to speak, journalism, academia, organizing, because it works.
Can be exposed.
They can be exposed. And so she emphasizes that. In closing, what are we to do, right? I just have, I co-sign, and I'm so grateful for everything that's already been shared. We need to listen to Black women, obviously. Black women in different places and positionalities in our society, including at the salon.
Yep.
Okay. We need to listen to Black women like my colleague Ruha Benjamin,
Yes.
who argues for, I can't say even argues for, who reminds us to redefine AI as ancestral intelligence.
Yes.
So these practices of calling in the ancestors are essential, right? So returning to indigenous and ancestral knowledge. And on that point, our ancestor Octavia Butler, she teaches us so many things, right? The power of Black women's imagination, how to shapeshift, how to time travel, how to survive, the law of consequences, cause and effect, the courage to call a thing, to face the unthinkable. Decades ago, some of us might recall, she wrote an essay about her experience after giving a talk. A student came up to her and was like, so what can we do though? This was published in 2000, her reflections on this just a few years before her death. I'm reading from her essays. The student asked her, so do you really believe that in the future we're gonna have the kind of trouble you write about in your books? A student asked me as I was signing books after a talk. The young man was referring to the troubles I described in, of course, Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents, novels that take place in a near future of increasing drug addiction and illiteracy, marked by the popularity of prisons and the unpopularity of public schools. The vast and growing gap between the rich and everyone else, the whole nasty family of problems brought on by global warming. I didn't make up the problems, I pointed out. All I did was look around at the problems we're neglecting now and give them about 30 years to grow into full-fledged disasters. Okay, the young man challenged. So what's the answer? There isn't one, I told him. No answer? You mean we're just doomed? He smiled as though this might be a joke. No, I said, I mean there's no single answer that will solve all of our future problems. There's no magic bullet. Instead, there are thousands of answers at least. You can be one of them if you choose to be. Thank you.